At first, I gotta tell you, this here. No.
Oh.
This here reads Kronenzeitung, which is a pretty right-wing newspaper.
Is it?
Yeah. Just to let you know.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, we had
See,
no
you
idea.
never know.
Yeah.
Just to let you know.
Should we burn? We'll burn them right.
Yeah.
Takes care of that.
Yeah. Oh, it's a shitty paper.
We didn't even know
So
what
are
that
they the
was. I was
sponsors that
actually
way?
curious about that.
Hey, we are the Last International.
And you're watching Moolah Chag with the Red Star.
The only TV you need.
You started the band one evening over a cup of coffee, talking about the world.
Oh, maybe.
Could be.
Is that the story?
That's what I've read.
I think
it always
what
changes.
Sony did, they said a story which was true, but the band had already formed. We were at Tom Morello's house, and at the time we were looking for a drummer because we're going to the studio in 2 weeks to record "We Will Rain," which is the debut
That's
album.
not that story. That's saying we were having a cup of coffee. Me
That-
and you. Me and
we
him
were
had
in-
a cup of coffee.
Just
It was
Two of
on
you.
Thanksgiving dinner. I think that the story changes, but that's the origins of the
before
story
that.
because we had never, ever said
Wait,
that
he's
we met
saying
over a
he's
cup
not
of coffee.
He's talking about the beginning of the band.
I am
Beginning.
explaining how the story that ended up getting to
See what you
him
started?
was that there was some kind of dinner or coffee somewhere where something had started. It had nothing to
I
do.
don't know, because
how the
every
band
interview
got
there's some other weird story that I don't think we ever said. It just happens to be.
And it has to do with
even-
Thanksgiving dinner. That's
Yeah.
why the cup of coffee.
Yeah, that's also what I read. That it went pretty fast then. You know, you recorded the first record in 2 weeks over Christmas time, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the band started a few years
Before
before,
that.
That's what I meant with the coffee.
Yeah, see, it
Oh.
wasn't Thanksgiving. It was
But there was no
before that.
coffee involved. We just
Yeah,
met
but-
each other.
I just read that story that you guys met at some cafe, you know, in New York, and
Did you say that once?
I may have said that once, but not. We weren't drinking coffee, so I guess they elaborated. Okay, sorry.
We lived
All
like
right,
a
yeah,
town
that's
away
all right.
from each other, so like we ran into each other. One time there was a coffee shop, we ran into each other. I guess maybe it has to do with that. Yeah.
you might work on that story. Well, you had a dream come true touring with Neil Young. But did you have the chance to, I don't know, sit there and listen to some stories of him?
Yeah, well, he was really. We got to see the sound check beforehand, and we got to see how he interacted with his band. And I remember he was eating cherries while he was doing the sound check, and it was awesome. It was raw,
Yeah,
and
he's total badass.
Neil Young's probably up there with the gods of music.
Well, what I remember from that sound check is my first experience with Neil Young was actually our first experience. He turns around to his band and is like, "Yeah, here's a new song. You never heard it before. It's in the key of A. We're doing it tonight, so you better learn it." And he starts playing it. I was like, "I'm gonna try that on them, see if it works." It was really cool.
Moolah Chag.
You went through a musician's nightmare because your van got broken into. Was that last year?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think
Andreas was on that tour,
No, it was before that tour.
but it did get broken into, right?
Twice.
Oh, twice.
The first
yeah,
time they
once
took
before that.
everything except for the
Yeah.
instruments, thank God. But they did take our hard drives with all our music ideas and
That was the bad one. Yeah.
all the footage that we've accumulated from the Robert Plant tour, the Neil Young tour, and all the other festivals we've done, summer tours and all that. So
Yeah.
that was a hard.
Did you get any of the stuff back?
No.
No.
We just had a.
On the one that I
Started-
was on,
That
we
one-
found everything down the street.
Yeah. The second
So whoever broke into it, they ended up giving it back. And, so it actually worked out for the
We actually
best.
found it under the guy's tent. He was like some homeless dude. All the stuff was under his makeshift living thing.
Moolah Chag.
You're close to Native Americans. You have friends there, right?
Yeah, we have some friends that our friend Tiokasin, we met in New York. He was Lakota Indian. He was in Standing Rock and the Lakota Reservation. Wounded Knee.
Yeah. I mean, America was founded on genocide, so for us as musicians, that's a topic that we want to touch on. Being from America,
Gee, but Pine Ridge, that's a fucking prison, right?
Yeah.
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 It's not the land of the free.
Absolutely
No.
not. And there's very few musicians that do speak up about, American Indian rights. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's
something-
one of the issues that get least attention.
It's so deep in our history, like as a nation. So
Yeah.
I mean, like to not talk about it, and things that go on even today, like the water quality there is the worst. Like it's terrible. We're polluting the waters, and so I mean, you
Like the
have
poorest
to.
areas of the U.S. are Indian reservations.
Yeah.
See, to me, since the 80s, every couple years I'm doing a story on Leonard Peltier, and still I'm thinking like, why the fuck is he still in prison? What country is it?
Yeah, the system is very unforgiving in the United States. Very unforgiving. Especially if you challenge it, they'll make sure you pay for it. That's why he's not getting out. Presidents will pardon, people like that commit white-collar crimes, or you can steal millions of dollars from the working, class people.
Yeah.
You'll get a pardon. But if you speak up for land rights or, indigenous, if you're part of the indigenous struggle, you're done.
They wouldn't let him out because he might become some Nelson Mandela,
Oh yeah.
That's exactly what it is, yeah.
And right now he's in a weakened state physically, so the fact that they're still not letting him out is just, it's a sick system. It's not right.
I wonder why Bono and all those other guys never did a Free Leonard concert movement,
Yeah, that's straight. I know Rage Against the Machine did.
Yeah, some did,
But one thing though was like before our time, when like in the 60s and maybe the first half of the 70s, especially when John Lennon was very politically active, and then you had like bands like MC5 and stuff like that, they were very much like ingrained and a part of social movements, and the social movements also pushed artists to become radicalized. I remember one of the concerts, like seeing a CD, or it actually was on vinyl in one of the record stores, and like, what is this, live in Madison Square Garden? It's like a 2-day concert, something like that John Lennon was throwing with all his friends or whatever. And it was a protest to free John Sinclair. He wrote like a protest song for the occasion or whatever. He would not leave until John Sinclair was freed. And of course, it took like 2 days or so for him to be freed. And back then, you'd also physically bust people out of prison, which I am all for. But today, it's just different politics. It's a whole different, it's an act.
Yeah, I don't see it, I don't see any big names, doing like real social protests,
Yeah, I think that the influence that music has, I mean, it obviously has a huge influence, but it's also limited, which is why Pete Seeger said, if music alone could change the world, I'd only be a musician, And so music on its own isn't really going to do much. So for an artist just to raise money or do something that is kind of standard now, it's really not going to move the needle in any way or do something. Even my favorite political bands nowadays, they're performing in front of like corporate sponsors, as we are. More needs to be done.
We had
what I'm saying?
a right-wing newspaper tied around my neck, and I didn't know.
Yeah, we didn't even know that.
There you
know
go.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was hard when we were on Sony. One thing that was interesting right away is like we wanted to plan some, like giving a percentage to a charity, something like very simple with our record, and there was so much red tape that you couldn't do it, and there was a list of like a very small list of like organizations you could do, like you couldn't have people donate to like what we wanted them to donate to. It had to be like the list that they had, like very safe organizations and all that. So there's a lot of red tape with probably the bigger artists on the big system.
Can you imagine why though? Because the organizations that we wanted to donate to were like, whether it's like the American Indian movement or, guerrilla groups around the world or something that are, fighting oppressive governments or whatever. So like that's even criminal. So for a band to do that, that was also, Tom Morello told us that was Rage's also intent with what they wanted to do. And at one point, they could have brought in criminal charges up against the band. They could have gotten some serious shit. That's the kind of action that I admire personally. Yeah. Not a safe protest with a president in attendance to raise money for some charity. That's not dangerous. You know what I mean?
Speaking of Tom, have you followed his work over the years?
Oh yeah. Growing up, we loved his band Rage Against the Machine and Audio Slave, and he became a friend and a mentor for the band. Like all of a sudden, we went to LA and he was there and came to one of our shows and sparked up a friendship, and he's
Oh yeah. You're on his
cool
album?
guy. Yeah. think I sang on a song for his new record. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it or anything, but I think I say that. Yeah, it sounds awesome.
It's really cool.
So, yeah.
Coming from New York, how did you like LA?
From New York? Oh, well, I noticed when we first got there that, especially Edgy, has a very loud voice. And it's not mean. He's not mean. He's a very nice, like, cool person. But to other people, they would get offended, and like everything we said, or more, I just said, they would get like angry and like, oh man, relax, man. Why are you being so crazy?
They don't like honesty, man. They don't like it. What do you think it is? It's the worst fucking thing I've ever heard. Like, they don't like that. You know what I mean? And people talk to me like that growing up, so I'm used to that. You know, so.
I guess we're a little harsher, but in LA we had some really great friends, and someone let us stay with them. Gerardo, if he's listening, he was really cool. He let us stay in his house for like months when we had nowhere to go. He even gave us his bed.
Nice.
So
we met a lot of great people there. Yeah. And we also offended a few too.
Yeah.
I was watching the show today, and with a couple other guys, and everybody was saying, no offense to you, but everybody was saying, just let her sing, nothing else. You know, we just want to listen to her voice.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Nice.
I like that.
Molachak.
Hey, we are the Last International.
And you're watching Mulachak with the Red Star.
The only TV you need.